Good afternoon, everybody. I was about to say good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining the call this afternoon. I will get it right in a second. We're just waiting for some more participants to join the call. We'll just start off with some of the introduction, and then hopefully we can have a full set of participants when we get into the main section of the discussion today. So welcome today to the WUN Net Zero in Utilities, and today we're going to be looking at the skills and opportunities in the future. My name is Karen Anderson, and I am the Programme Development Manager here at WUN. And I'm joined on the call today by Louise Parry, who is one of our WUN board directors, who will be taking over in a minute and introducing you to the rest of our panellists for today. So first of all, just a brief introduction to WUN for those of you who may not be familiar. WUN was formed back in 2018 by a group of women who realised that there was a real lack of women within the utilities sector, and particularly those in senior roles. Since 2018, the network has gone from strength to strength. Just before Christmas, we celebrated reaching 8,000 followers and members, which is something that I don't think the board or the founders thought was possible in their wildest imaginations back in 2018. But what we do as a network is provide regular events and content for our members, which are available throughout the year, and I'll provide some more details on as we just go quickly through these slides. So we are supported by a wonderful bunch of partners. We've got over 60 plus partners from within the utilities and supporting sectors, and we're really grateful to those partners, because without their support we wouldn't be able to put on events like we have today, and all of the resources that we have available. We've got some great events coming up in 2025. We've got an event, our first in-person event of 2025 in February on the 18th. That's in Birmingham, and again it's centred around this journey to net zero, with a particular focus on the water industry. And just been released is an event in London on the 6th of March. It's all focused around careers in trading, particularly focused on women. That's a new event that's available to book on our website now. We've also got a large number of I Am Remarkable programmes scheduled throughout the year. These are amazing free events that are put on by our WUN advocates and board members as part of the I Am Remarkable programme. So really encourage you. You can see 2 of those already sold out for this year, but there are many more available dates. And something we're really excited about and looking forward to is our Women in Utilities Awards, which is in June of this year. Nominations for those awards are now live. There's more information on our website and on our LinkedIn page, so encourage you to have a look at those. It's our second awards. We had our first ones last year, were really successful, over 400 attendees with many different categories. And we've got lots of information and resources on our website again to support in those nominations. Coming next week, we are launching our annual survey. We'll have more information on LinkedIn along with the links to complete the surveys. We're really asking for you to participate in that and send those links over to your colleagues. We want to capture your thoughts and opinions to give us some really valid data for us to share amongst the industry. This year, based on our findings from our unconscious bias survey last year, we're focusing on workplace culture. On our website, we've got a wealth of different resources. We've got podcasts, we've got video podcasts, and we've got blogs. On the screen there, you can see 2 of our latest podcasts that are available to view or to listen to. So we've got our latest audio podcast, which is all around networking. Obviously, as the Women's Utility Network, networking is really important to us. And there's some great tips and some steps to get you into networking if you find that daunting. So yeah, encourage you to listen to that. And our second of our video podcast is also available, where we delve into mentoring and career mapping in depth. And again, encourage you to log in and have a look at that podcast, even though it's very difficult to listen to your own voice as I'm on that one. Also available on our website is our free mentoring platform. Again, without our partners, we wouldn't be able to provide this amazing resource. We've got a large number of fantastic mentors on there from across the utilities industry. So really, if you'd like to get involved, either as a mentor or a mentee, we'd love to have you on board. So again, check that out. All you need to do is to become a member of WUN. And then once you've got your membership number, you can log on and set yourself up on our mentoring platform. And finally, released towards the end of last year, we've got our Women's Utilities Network Development Programme. It's a series of different programmes that are aimed to support women within the utilities sector. At the moment, our first cohort of Drive is live and they're approaching their third module. And in March of this year, we will be starting our second cohort of Drive and our first cohort of Thrive. We're really excited by this. The Drive programme is a skills development programme aimed at those women in their first leadership positions or approaching first leadership positions. And then WUN Thrive is aimed at women in the utilities sector looking for senior leadership progression. And if you want any more information on that, that's again available from our website, or if you want to discuss any further, then do feel free to get in touch with us. And finally, for anyone on the call who's not yet a member of the Women's Utilities Network, there's a QR code there. Please scan the code, pop some details in, and you'll be added to our mailing list. You'll get a newsletter on a quarterly basis, plus any other information that we want to send out to our members. We're also really active on LinkedIn, so follow us on LinkedIn and you'll get all of the information coming through on there as well. Thank you very much for attending today, and a massive thank you to Emily, Louise, Jen and Steve for supporting us. I'm going to hand over to Louise now to take over. Thank you.
Well, that's an old photo. We definitely need to change that. So it's my great pleasure today to chair today's WUN for All. And as it says there, I'm one of the WUN directors. So I've been a board director at Women's Utilities Network for just coming up to 3 years. And my day job is Director of People and Organisational Development at Energy and Utility Skills. And we're joined by fantastic speakers from our partners. We're going to be joined by Steve Barrett, who is Director of Membership and Strategic Engagement at Energy and Utility Skills. He's sat in the same room as me, so I'm going to try not to kick him or look at him. I'm going to look at the screen. We've also got Jen Goldsworthy, who's Talent Acquisition Lead at Morrison or M Group Services. She's going to outline what it looks like from an employer perspective as to what the opportunities and skills we're looking for. Steve will be outlining from a sector perspective the opportunities that are coming up and those key sector developments. And then we welcome Emily Timmins, who's Director of Water Recycling at Anglian Water, who's going to put this into practice and share some of her career stories and some of the hints and tips she's learned along the way. There's opportunities for questions and answers at the end of the session, so I'll leave some time for that. But just to put some things into context before I hand over to Steve, we're in a really exciting time for the industry. If we look before Christmas, so Karen has outlined the upcoming WUN event on the road to net zero for water before Christmas. We held that in the road to net zero for energy. What we saw also before Christmas was the publication of the Clean Energy Action Plan, and we saw the final determinations for the asset management period in water. And what we can also see is that the green sectors is a priority sector in the industrial strategy. So one thing is for certain, there's lots of exciting opportunities coming up in the utility sector. And today's WUN for All really will focus in on what they are and how you can get involved. And then with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Steve.
Thanks very much, Louise. And just really to build on what Louise has said, I think that significant transformation is being driven by a number of things around technological advancements, regulatory frameworks, evolving customer demands, this drive for net zero. So I'm just going to go through a few things just to set the scene. If I go through these, that could take the whole hour in detail, so I won't do that. I'll kind of brush over these quite quickly. But certainly that transition from kind of the carbon intensive fuels at the moment that we have to a much more greener technologies, looking at solar, wind growth, and what that means in terms of resources. Some of the things which are coming out of that area at the moment mean that there will be significant growth going forward. Things like energy storage, looking at that, looking at managing demand and kind of peaks and troughs in energy demand, and make sure we can kind of cope with that. It's going to be really important as we go forward. And also hydrogen. I think some of the transitions which we're looking at, the exciting things that could happen with hydrogen, but they are hinging quite largely on government decisions, and also kind of which road we're going to go down. Is that going to be heating people's homes? Is that going to be for energy production? It's going to be for transport and things like heavy industry and that side of things. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Also, decarbonisation and those net zero targets. We're driving for net zero. You know, we need to make sure that we achieve that. We've got some ambitious targets, and then as we've already heard, government issuing their plans and where they want to get to. Well, actually, there's a skills implement or there's a skills element to that transition as well. And we need to consider how long it takes to bring people across to that greener technology. Also, things like grid modernisation, updating. So we talk about constantly the distribution system operation and what that means in terms of managing micro generation, as well as some of the big generators. We're bringing on new nuclear power, for instance, and how does the grid cope with that? And therefore, there has to be a capacity to be able to kind of cope with that traffic. Things like electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. Gosh, we know that there's been a number of changes kind of on the bus, off the bus, in terms of deadlines around what that future sales of electric vehicles or internal combustion engines looks like. And we know that target is getting closer around 2030. So therefore, we need to make sure that we are adapting what we have in terms of infrastructure. And sometimes we think about that as just the EV side of things, but actually there's implications for the wider networks as well. So quite a lot going on in that space. Things like energy security. You know, we've had a few things come up recently. Things like the Russia-Ukraine war, what that means for our interconnectors and how we bring in gas, for instance, from overseas, and also making sure that those interconnectors, we have that flattening out of that demand. So therefore, that whole system has implications. Digitalization, innovation. We've been talking quite a lot about digitalization today in a meeting which Louise and I have been in. There's so much going on in that space, and one of the things which I took away certainly from that discussion was AI. Digitalization runs through all aspects of our roles, and it's not one thing that sits outside of that, but it's definitely going to be a key component as we go forward, as all of our roles become much more digitally focused. Looking at energy efficiency, demand management, I've already talked quite a lot about that, but also in the regulatory and policy developments. And you know, we've already mentioned Rio GD3, we've just gone through T3 as well, electricity transmission, and water industry competing for certain resources around gas and water, quite similar skill sets. So therefore, all these things come to play in what has become or is starting to become quite a hyper competitive environment for those similar resources. But with that future investment in that infrastructure also brings its challenges in terms of getting people to the skills level we need. Also, that the implications on supply chain and the associated supply chain for delivering against that work as well. Also, things like investment trends. So looking at carbon capture, utilization and storage, quite difficult to see what that's going to look like without that assurance from government. So therefore, policy certainty is going to be really important in that side as well. Resilience, climate adaptation, certainly on the water side, making sure that we can withstand those future things like floods, hurricanes, wildfires, other natural disasters. We haven't seen too many of those in the UK, but we have seen quite a lot of that, and what that means for the grid going forward, and the infrastructure that supports that. So look, there's quite a lot going on in this space, and they're all macro elements which are going to impact how that workforce starts to evolve. And what that means is when we look at future skills demands, when we look at future roles, which we're going to go on to in a second, we need to consider that through the lens of those changing factors, which are sometimes outside of our control, and they're being driven by some of the policy decisions, some of the technological changes which are happening, which are absolutely key to that transition. And I think, you know, a big part of that is going to be around public opinion, and we all have a vested interest in achieving this net zero and also mitigating that risk of climate change. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So some of the challenges which we've got, and we talked about what does the industry need. So look, by the end of 2030, we're estimating we're going to need about 312,000 new people coming into the workforce. Like if you look at the timescales associated with that, so between now and 2030, we're already into January 2025. So a lot of those resources which we're going to need are going to be either in the workforce already, or they're going to be a significant way through perhaps apprenticeship programs or graduate programs. So it's going to be a little bit of perhaps taking the workforce that we've got and looking at reskilling programs and bringing them into the workplace. Also, if you look at the figures which we've got here as well, there's a certain amount of this which comes from retirement. So we talk about 205,500 new jobs, so therefore 32% of the workforce up from 2024. And also there's 106,800 retirements. So if you look at that, the expected time which people would go into retirement. I know we've seen a bit of a shift post-COVID, and people have kind of weighed up their options. Sometimes they've been more likely to stay in work a little bit longer, but I think since COVID, we're certainly seeing trends where people are either retiring slightly earlier, or they're retiring when they come to that age where they can draw down their pension. So therefore, we're competing with different challenges. If you look at the scale then across each of the networks, gas networks, utilization, power, waste and recycling, and water, you can see there's a significant uplift. And in terms of percentage growth, that is spread across those 5 years. And if you look at the speed of implementation about some of these programs, it creates that, if you like, that picture that there is significant demand. Yes, we're growing in some areas based on predicted investment from industry, but what I would say is we're not starting from ground zero. So we do have some of these people in the workforce. These are roles. Some people may move around within these roles, and also we're looking at not the implications perhaps of what this means for apprentices coming in or graduates coming in, but also the implications for the current workforce and how we can attract people in from other perhaps adjacent industries that might be interested in working in an energy sector or utility sector that's going to really impact that transition to net zero. So if we just move on to the next slide then. So what does that mean then in terms of the occupational headlines? So we forecast to increase the size of what we've got at the moment through occupational groups by 2030. They are really predominantly looking around science, research, engineering professionals. So if you think about the demographics, and certainly in the context of looking at underrepresented groups, and since we're doing women in utility networks, then women in the industry, we have historically had low representation from those groups. So therefore, we would anticipate we would start to drive a much more diverse workforce as we're transitioning, and we have an opportunity to grow the workforce by so many with that change. We'd look to be driving that as well. Also looking at business, public service, associate professionals, and skilled metal, electrical, electronic trades. Now, they are traditionally perhaps in a more male-dominated environment, but I think this is a really good opportunity to be driving increased diversity through those groups. So therefore, we would welcome, and we would certainly look to, through some of the initiatives which we have running around almost a macro sector attraction initiative, such as the work which we're doing through the Energy and Utility Skills Partnership, and looking at things like energy and utility careers and jobs, which is a project which we have running between many of our member organisations, which looks at presenting a shop window for industry and actually presenting more than just the jobs, looking at what does it mean to work in an industry like ours, and what would you expect to see when you get to an industry like ours. We continuously talk about things like about digitalization and the roles which you're coming into, but we still have a fundamental operation to either transport power, electricity, gas, water around the UK. So therefore, there is still an element of that, but certainly the transition, the direction of travel which we're heading at the moment are into those new digitalized areas. Also, occupations, we're looking to attract the highest number of new people into the workforce. Again, science, research, engineering, technology professionals, on that skilled metallurgical, electronic trades and corporate managers and directors. So right the way through that, if you like, that career path. So therefore, it's not one size fits all. We need to think differently about how we attract people into the industry, but not only how we attract them, how we retain them as well. And that's going to be really important. So in terms of opportunities which are out there, some of the areas which you can go into, you can see down the right-hand side that the skill level, which stretches from level 7, 8, or if you're in Scotland, 11 to 12, right the way down to 1, and actually the percentage spread across those roles. So therefore, the opportunity to come into the industry at various levels, depending on whether you come through a graduate program, or you come through a degree, or you're entering through an apprenticeship program, or just as a new entrant coming straight out of school, there are opportunities for all. And certainly we are looking at things like entry requirements, entry criteria into those sorts of roles, and making sure that we do open as many opportunities as we can to bring people in, because we're hugely aware that looking at the statistics of people coming out of children coming out of school this year and not being in employment, etc. Looking at just shy of 1 million people there, and actually there's probably around just shy of a third of those wouldn't have come out of school with 5 GCSEs or equivalent. So therefore, we are looking at those entry levels to make sure we are not excluding some of the huge talent which is out there, which is going to support us in that transition to net zero. So there's lots to go out. There are so many opportunities out there for people to come into industry, but we are also hugely aware that the organizations that often we deal with do not struggle to get new entrants into many of their roles. What we do struggle with is getting a diverse workforce in. So therefore, we need to be thinking about who we're attracting into the industry to make sure that we are representative of the customers that we serve. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Steve. So in summary, massive growth in the numbers of opportunities across the sector. So 312,000 new people, over 205,000 new roles. So lots of exciting opportunities at all levels across the sector. So Jen, really to come to you to translate this into what this looks like from an employer's perspective, some of the skills that you're going to be looking for, group services and the roles you'll be recruiting to over the next few years.
Yes, no problem. Although now just following Steve, seeing all that data and then realising that half of our company needs to recruit all of those roles is slightly worrying. If there's anyone else on the call that's in a talent acquisition role or recruitment, you're probably looking at that and thinking, oh my gosh. But I'll kick off. So thank you, obviously, first and foremost, for the team for giving me this opportunity to come and talk about N Group. So what I'll do, I'm going to give you an overview of our group, our divisions, talk a little bit about our types of roles, opportunities, and then give some more kind of specific advice around the kind of talent acquisition process, bit of myth busting, and then that will be it from me. So I'll try and keep to my slot. If we could go to the next slide, which I know sounds really cringe, so sorry guys. So little overview then for anyone who hasn't heard of M Group Services. We are one of the UK's #1 platforms for essential infrastructure services to life. So you can just see here's sort of a brief infographic around some of the things that we get up to across all of our different areas, you know, employee wise. That figure actually has increased since a new acquisition. So we're sitting at around 12,000 people. Order book is really strong, and you know, we're operating across those 216 locations across the UK. So that's anywhere from Scotland with our Scottish water frameworks or Scottish gas, all the way down to our leakage detection framework in Cornwall. So really, really spread across the UK. And then what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about some of the specific work that goes on in those divisions, just to give you kind of a flavour of the type of clients that we work with and sort of the numbers of people in there. If we could go to the next slide. So as well, just to be really open here, when you look at group services, you might not always realize that actually all of these brands that sit on this slide here are within our group, and then we split ourselves between those different divisions there that you can see on the left hand side. So if any of those that you see that, oh, you know, I've heard of them, you might have seen a Morrison Data Services van driving around your area, and they've come into your home to read your meter. That would be a employee, a person of M Group. And as well, you know, if you're in the London area, so you might have had a Morrison Water Services person come to your home, install your meter, but it's the type of things you wouldn't realise because those people wear the client's PPE and the client clothes. So, you know, our brand sometimes gets a little diluted sort of out in the world because we're operating as the client in some of those occasions. So yeah, that's a little overview of some of our brands in case you recognise any of those on there. If we go to the next slide, so a little bit more in-depth information about the water division. So you again, it's operating all the way from Scotland to the southwest and everything in between. You can see our clients there, who we work with. So we have quite a lot of different frameworks in water. So whether that be large capital, delivery type projects, metering, developer services, or whether it's leakage framework, I said that one. So it's so varied, and then that obviously links into the types of positions that are then available between that. I'll come on to that a bit later. But you can see, you know, there's nearly 3,000 people operating in that space, and you can see some of our kind of core capabilities of what we're able to do in that area. If we move on. Then you've got the energy division. So they've got a few more people than water, which does sometimes turn into slight internal competition about who's the biggest division. And then you can see again here with the services, and then where that's translating into those types of skills that we would be looking for around, you know, that data management piece. And a lot of that is around that moving, you know, with how we're collecting that information, learning from it, and taking it back to the clients. You know, you can see some really long-term relationships, and an organisation like ours is built quite a lot on that relationship piece. You know, it's all around competitive tender where we win these types of projects. So that relationship management piece, you know, the bid writing, those softer things that you think, well, you're seeing people out in the street that are delivering the type of work, but there's those back office people that needed to write that tender, that needed to do the business development conversation. So much different transient things come into the fold. If we move to the next one, so there, yeah, telecom division. So again, in here, the different kind of brands that operate, and you can see the kind of clients there that we're working with. So some of that will be on the civil side, some of it will be on the tech side, installations. So again, really varied, where you might have people that are out either in supervisory type roles, or people that are working in the telecom network on behalf of Openreach, for example, and all of the kind of different ones. You've got Ericsson in there, GigaClear, a smaller company, kind of Southwest based. So lots of different types of sort of, again, services that we provide that then clearly we'll be recruiting for. Just as a kind of summary, I think last year we did 3,500 hires as a group. So, you know, a lot going on there. If we go to next slide, hopefully you can all tell I'm trying to learn from not reading what's on the slide so that you guys can see what's on there. I hate it when people do that. So when we are talking about our transport division, so it's kind of split between aviation and then rail. So, you know, quite clearly from the different types of clients that you can see that we work with and deliver work, again, framework agreements where we're moving into kind of things with Network Rail. I'm not as familiar with this one, so forgive me. So I think is it CP7? I think that'll be the next framework, or CP6. There's some different ones that's a framework that Network Rail, and then the types of people obviously that you're working on. That Gatwick Airport could be maintenance, again, of gritting runways, like you name it. It could be that type of work, but then also a framework director that then needs to look after that. So again, really varied. Next one. And then, oh yeah, highways. So with regards to highways, that's split in 3 ways, where we talk about infrastructure, street lighting, and then projects. So very much for working for that county council area within the those different areas where we win those contracts from councils. Tends to be a lot of 2P, so people coming in, which then obviously we then need to recruit those roles. So different stuff goes on in here, a lot more big focus around social value that happens here. So, you know, again, when you're looking at one element of just having, you know, a highways operative that might be putting out cones, you've then got an ecologist, you've got people that are responsible for developing the type of people we recruit from different backgrounds, ex-offenders, they've got ex-military programs. So all kind of different pieces of work that fit into that highways space. And you can see obviously again location wise where we're operating. So if we go to the next slide, of course, all of the group wouldn't be able to operate without the group support team. So, you know, in the back office, you've then got all of the different things that's going on, you know, payroll team, people services, mergers and acquisitions, finance, you know, all of that then, you know, yes, I know we're talking utilities industry, but, you know, for us, we've got a head office where we then operate out of as well from a, you know, payroll perspective, marketing, communication. So it's not, you know, I know we're talking about skills in the utilities area, but, you know, there's also a lot of other things to sort of factor in career-wise as well. And that's that. So that's our overview of the group, a bit of information. And then here is, I just wanted to kind of highlight as well some of the kind of key skills that us as an organisation and others, you know, this is that will be operating in this space that we'll kind of be looking at. So, you know, looking again, links back to what Steve was talking about around that kind of technical expertise, you know, project management, regulatory knowledge can be quite important for us, especially when we're working, you know, in those specific sectors, they are regulated. So, you know, there's rules around the different types of things that we can do in that space. And having that regulatory knowledge can support that. Again, when we're looking at leadership and communication, bringing in a leader, sometimes, you know, coming out of industry, people from retail in different areas, it's not just about having a utilities background, it's about how you come up, how you can be a leader and how you do that role. Especially as well, environmental awareness, something that's quite key as we, you know, everything that we're doing in the environment around our kind of carbon neutral strategy, you know, which is on a lot of people's agendas. So we've got all of those different types of things that a lot of people that don't have a utilities background will still have these skills. And again, around customer service, as on those previous slides I've shown you, each one of those clients is our customers, and the people, the members of the public also are our customers. So it's about, you know, keeping the clients happy, the customers, the staff, that, you know, not everyone has got that skill to be able to manage that on both sides. So that was that, just some of the key skills. And then if we move on to the next one, what I wanted to show you here, so I'm just going to do a disclaimer. At the moment, the group, we have 4 different career sites to be able to look at our different jobs. That is going to be changing very shortly. It's just the way that we've been set up and how things have changed with acquisition, etc. From April, we will have 1 career site. For now, there's 4. If anyone obviously wants to have a look at the type of roles we've got advertised at the moment, you can have a look here. You can scan obviously any of the codes that will take you through to those job pages. And I've just sort of provided some types of different job titles as an example that are available at this time, but feel free to obviously have a look at your own leisure. And then if we move to the next slide. Sorry, I'm only thrown just because when these have come through, they're not in the same colours as when I sent them in. They've changed on the formatting, which is fine, but I was just a bit thrown. So what I wanted to do now is I know when I came on, I deliberately didn't introduce myself or tell you anything about who I am or what I do. So I thought I wanted to just provoke a bit of thought thinking about when we're talking about our CV and what we're doing. So I'm going to do two things. Let me know any thoughts. Happy for people to put anything in the chat. So when we're talking about our CV, if I introduce myself, so my name is Jen Goldsworthy. I live in Bedfordshire. I'm 33. I've one dependent, age 13, marital status. I'm divorced, but now I'm engaged. And I have an MVQ level 1 in hospitality and catering. Anyone on the call thinking, why is she telling me all this information? That's not relevant. Why is she oversharing with this type of information? And I just wanted to really highlight to get people to think when you're applying for roles, you've normally got, depending on the type of level of position, a very small 10-second time frame of people to be able to review the key information on your CV to then be putting it forward. And what you don't want to be doing is putting anything irrelevant on there, things that aren't related to the role or things that aren't highlighting your skills. So I'm going to introduce myself again, just to give you an example of what I mean by that. So I'm Jennifer Goldsworthy. I have 11 years of talent acquisition experience. I've worked in the utilities sector for over 10 years with experience from Kier Group and M Group's water division. So my experience spans from volume recruitment, experienced hires, executive level and early careers. I've led teams between 5 and 15, responsible for about 1,000 hires a year in my current role. I'm qualified in various psychometric testing tools. I've delivered focused campaigns concentrating on people with barriers to the labour market, such as ex-offenders and NEET cohorts. And I've used these strategies to deliver the S in our ESG strategy, which was able to also implement measurement tools to increase our average employee retention in this cohort, overall enabling the growth plan of the division. So you see how that's the only information that I need to be telling a hiring manager about me as a talent acquisition professional. And that's where I want you to just really think about what you've got on there. Now, you might not agree. This is just a piece of advice I'd like to share as somebody who would, works in this area and, has probably reviewed about 5,000 CVs this year. How are we for time?
Yeah, Jen, thank you for that practical guidance. I think you're probably going to get a number of job offers as a result of that page. Thank you for sharing those insights. The amount of growth, so 3,500 new roles in M Group services. So just helps from attendees to see from an employer perspective the scope and size of the opportunities. You've clearly given some insights into the skills that organisations like yourselves are going to be looking for, some insights on how to apply, and clearly through one website moving forward. But how individuals can put themselves forward, you're absolutely right. It's that personal elevator pitch. As individuals walk through the door, you're right, you've probably got that 15, 20 seconds to make that first impression for the first time, haven't you? Okay, conscious of time, what I'm going to do is to move to Emily. So just to bring to life how to navigate a career and what a fantastic career you've had, Emily. So if you could share some of your career story and some of the practical tips that you would share with women looking to have exciting careers in the utility sector.
Oh my God, awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome, team, to this wonderful opportunity. And I'm probably at the tail end of my career, right? So part of my sort of like commitment to the utility sector is advocating for us, right, in general, and showing people the art of the possible, because I genuinely believe when you just hear about the size and the investment in this space, this is a seize the day moment for us all, right, isn't it? It's definitely a carpe diem. So what I'm hoping to share with you very, very briefly, and happy to take questions later, is I suppose my sort of like, well, it's not so much of a secret sauce, is it? It's probably sort of my one-on-one around how to be, successful in these sectors and what I've learned along the way. So 30 years, 30 flipping years in the water industry, right? 28 years in leadership roles. And I suppose it's like a beautiful jam sandwich. There was 10 years at frontline operations and 10 years outside of frontline operations doing enablement, like partnering and supporting. And then another 10 years right back at the coal face of it again. And, you know, all of that has been incredibly insightful and building towards the career and the position that I've got today, which is leading and directing over 2,500 people in Anglian Water and being accountable for, with the rest of the executive team, direction of the organisation. So I'll share with you, right, my top sort of like secret sauces or ingredients that I think when I reflect and look back on my career, I go almost, I wish I'd have supercharged those earlier, but now I know they're the things that I say to people like you in your various stages of your career. So you know, I don't think it's a bad thing, right, having some basic technical knowledge, right? I don't think it's necessarily a barrier to progression, but I think there's something about having an empathy from the front line, you know, an understanding from their perspective, because when you get to leadership roles, looking back down and putting yourself in their shoes and looking up is a really, really important trait for a leader, to be able to, you know, understand that you're serving those people that are delivering important work at the front line. So I don't be afraid of not having technical knowledge, but be really ambitious about wanting to get some to enable that empathy. I think allyship and mentoring. Now, you know, WUN has a brilliant mentoring proposition, and I'm a mentor, right? So, you know, it's not a pitch. There's plenty of us right out there, but finding those mentors, finding those sponsors, right, early and late in your career is something to be I suppose sought out. You know, they're the people that can really enable us and help us along our way. And asking for help is a trait, right, that we've all got to learn. It's not a bad thing. So going in there, finding those allies, finding those mentoring opportunities is super great. The one that I talked a little bit in my podcast about was, I've referred to it as backing yourself, but really what I'm saying is advocate for yourself. Stop thinking that you need to be perfect, that you have to have the perfect CV or the perfect answer. You really need to demonstrate and back yourself, and go for those sort of slightly more riskier opportunities. My career has been littered with risk. Right, I've gone sideways more than I've gone up, but I was always willing to say yes, even if I didn't really understand, I suppose, the technical details and the nuances of the role. I suppose I was sort of hungry for that intellectual challenge and the opportunity to prove myself in different ways. I would say this: get your leadership experience in early. It is possibly one of the most rewarding experiences and the highlights of my entire career. I started early. I learned what a servant leader was. I understood you know, the meaning of it, and I learnt my craft over many, many years. To really succeed, right, get in there early, but know that it's you serving people, like they're not serving you. And I think the backdrop to this is deliver brilliantly, like show your worth, go that extra mile, bring your talents and your differences to the table. That's what organisations need from us. Now, I've learned some hard lessons, right? And I'll just share with you a couple, because I think if I can help you navigate and avoid some of those things, then, you know, I'm doing my job as advocating for us all. And I think the first one is, I've mentioned it before, which is that advocacy and backing myself. You know, being, I suppose, perceptually seen as being quite different in a traditionally male-dominated industry. I saw that as a negative and not a strength. And I've come to learn the lesson that actually that difference is a strength. And I don't think it's a silver bullet that's helped me along the way. I think it's a multitude of the things that I talked about previously that really sort of powered me on to be that advocate for myself as well. The other challenge that I think you know, I've definitely learned is about personal resilience and work-life balance. You know, I was a working mum. I am a working mum. You know, that's the most important thing in my life. And, you know, working in operations, sometimes the lines get blurred, and it certainly can be full on and busy. FYI, it's amazing. But you need to know your personal boundaries, and you need to work out how to maintain that awesome resilience, you know, building your networks, having personal and professional relationships, doing the things that also fill your soul in lots of different ways that enable you to be awesome. So I just want to quickly end on what I look for when I hire people. Right, I'm not looking for a totally like awesome tick box on, you know, like every potential skill that you could imagine. I'm looking for motivation. I'm looking for traits, right? And here are the key things, 3 words: care, curiosity, and courage. Right, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that's got determination and vision, adaptability and problem solving, people-centered leadership and that emotional intelligence, and decisiveness under pressure. None of that says that you've got a BSc in civil engineering or a master's qualification or an MBA. I'm way past that point. There's so much talent out there, but it's about motivation and it's about desire and traits. And they're the things that when I interview, they're the things I'm unpicking. So you've heard today in this session that there is a wealth of opportunity, right? This is our seize the day moment. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say, but I could talk about this stuff for hours.
We'd let you, Emily. Thank you. So there's lots to take away. So opportunity for questions, I will go to the chat in a second. But if I pull together some of the pointers I've taken away, so jam sandwich career, I like that. And it's true, certainly if I look at mine, it sort of started out in the world of personnel as it was back in the day. And then I moved into ops and I had operational roles for a number of years. And then my jam sandwich, I'm back into all things people. So I like that concept. But certainly the guidance around the role of allies and sponsors, and I certainly have benefited from having some fantastic sponsors over my career. Both you and Jen sharing that advocacy, backing yourself, it's selling yourself. It's not the roles that you've held, it's selling yourself as an individual. It's the motivations and your traits that we're looking for, not the jobs necessarily that you've held. And the importance of networks. So of course, I would advocate Women's Utilities Network and being part of that and joining upcoming events and making those connections. Certainly every Women's Utilities Network event I've been to, you can physically see and hear those connections being made. So please use Women's Utilities Network to grow those networks. So please, any questions in the chat? I'm just going to reflect what's in there. So yes, some of the feedback as Jen shared. So that tendency to talk about the jobs that we've held rather than the skills are much more useful in getting yourself seen by the recruitment panels. Certainly, Emily, somebody knows you already. So Deborah, when you were at Severn Trent. Risk control management roles, there was a question around that being a key skill, and certainly Jen's already fed back that's roles that do exist in the sector, and certainly they're often embedded in professional services, which is a comment from Beth. So things like corporate risk, rather than a distinct role in itself or distinct division in itself. So pending any questions from attendees, we've had lots of hints and tips through the discussion, but what would be the one key takeaway that you would want attendees from today's session to take away? And I'm going to look over my room that I'm sat in and ask Steve, what would be your key takeaway, Steve?
I think it's the scale of opportunity and the fact that yes, whilst the industry may be dominated by men at the moment, that's not to say that it won't change in the future. There are so many opportunities out there for everyone to embrace at all levels, because there are so many jobs and so many people that we're going to need to deliver this. You have to bear in mind that we are operating in a hyper-competitive environment, and people are pulling on the same type of skills right the way across the industries that we represent. So therefore, there are opportunities. But look, we want we want high quality, dedicated people with a passion for the job. And listening to Emily there, the passion is palpable. You can kind of sense it's a real, it's a real want to deliver this transition to net zero, mitigate the risk of climate change. It's in our future, it's in our children's future, and therefore, being part of that as a big picture, I think is really, a great opportunity. And when I go back home and I say, I'm part of that transition to net zero, and I feel proud to do that. So I think, yeah, the one takeaway is, you know, there are opportunities out there. Please do embrace those opportunities and get involved.
So Karen has shared a QR code there for feedback, so please provide feedback on the session. Just to pick up on what Steve has just been talking about, there's a question in the chat about the attraction of more young women into the sector, and certainly we've got some practical skills to take away, some practical guidance and advice today. Certainly, if I look at Jen, Emily, what are you as employers doing to engage more women coming into the sector?
If I could just comment for Emily, if that's okay. So I see someone's replied back about STEM, which, yes, a lot of organisations will have, you know, a STEM strategy around engaging with schools, colleges, etc. But for us, actually, it's going that step further back, that you need to make sure that you're engaging with these children. When we're talking about young women, we need to be talking to them at primary school. So this is about influencing young children to be involved in this type of career around those STEM subjects, that actually you're engaging with them when they're 4, they're 8, they're 12. Because if you're going into a school when they're 13, it's too late. So that's our view on getting it in early, to be able to then, we're talking about a workforce that actually won't be in the workforce for another 12 years. But if we're going to make a difference to this industry, it's about taking it that far back. And that's what, you know, I know that we're looking at what we can do more in that area, and I'm sure other organisations will be as well. But that's what I'd say on that one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I heard something from the British Science Council not too long ago where by the age of about 8, they're already drawing scientists as white men in white coats. So getting in early to change those career influences and understanding that women can have careers in exciting industries like ours. And some examples from Claire in the chat around youth panels, and also questions around the demographic gap. So how can we get the senior engineers in the sector to mentor, develop graduates, particularly as we're seeing that ageing workforce, and they may well be leaving as well. So how do we ensure that happens, particularly over the asset management period? Is that a question for you, Emily?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, again, going to come back to the point, there's no silver bullet. You've got to attack it from multiple angles, right? You've got to grow the future generation using the strategies that Jen outlined, and put people that people can relate to in those situations as well. So, you know, showing the role models, using the voices that people can relate to at various different stages in their career, right at the very beginning. Now, I go into schools, right, and I slightly a more secondary school and Jen, right, and the amount of girls that come up to me afterwards and go, I had no idea, and you know, you come from a council house background in Birmingham, right, you're not got a privileged upbringing, and well, we could be like you. So having relatable people put in front of children and showing the way is really great. Now that's, you know, early career development, feeding the sausage factory, but also I think, you know, you're right in saying that the top end of it is basically enabling people that are in their careers to grow as well. You know, that the mentoringship of like senior engineers, for example, pulling people up too. So I think, you know, like my commitment for me at my, you know, as a silver surfer at the, you know, tail end of my career is, you know, I need to do both of those things, which is, you know, help pull people through so they're kicking me out the way, but also grow the pipeline for the future. So a lot of organizations have strategies like that. But the other thing I just want to throw in the mix is we really need social strategies too. There's a real untapped, beautiful resource in places like social mobility hotspots where young girls and young boys really struggle to, you know, access opportunities, poorly supported by schools, poorly supported by parents, right, a financially difficult and challenging circumstances. There's a wealth of beautiful resource there where I think we've got a social responsibility to not just think about kids at uni and, you know, kids at sort of like big educational places, but actually tapping into that resource too. Sorry, I think I like a waffled on, but I think what I'm saying is it's a multi-pronged attack, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And with that in mind, just conscious of time, just going to draw today's webinar to a close. Steve has shared energy and utility careers and jobs. So lots of sector employers share their vacancies on there. So some of the vacancies you may be looking for now or in the future may be accessed through there. But most importantly, as it says on the slide, thank you to all of the amazing speakers today. So thank you, Steve, thank you, Jen, and thank you, Emily, for contributing to the session. And thank you to all of you that have attended today. I'm not going to go back over all of the things that Karen shared early on in the session, but it is a great opportunity to remind you of the Path to Net Zero in-person event that's coming up. Very timely and very related to the discussions that we've had. So that's on the 18th of February. As I've said, Women's Utilities Network is about connecting women. So please use the network to build those networks and access the mentoring services. All of our services are free of charge. And listen to the amazing podcasts, not least Emily's. So they're all available on our website. So please, as Helen has also highlighted, we will also direct from our website to all of the career pages of our partners. So we also highlight those vacancies that are really key for the sector as well. So through our LinkedIn and social channels, we'll really highlight some of the key vacancies as well. So thank you all for attending. Thank you again, panel, and hopefully see you all again soon.
Thanks.